Thanks for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast. My name is Steven Jodderant. Joining me today, as always, is Jake Watroba, and today we got a special guest making his Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast debut is Tom Bogert. Make sure you follow him at Tom Bogert. He covers Major League Soccer. He's written for multiple outlets, including MLSsoccer.com, The Guardian, all the big fancy soccer ones. Tom, welcome to the program. How you doing?
Thanks for having me, fellas. Doing pretty good in this Sunday evening.
Yes, it is January 26, 2020. We are live. And listeners, on today's episode, problems in Toronto, Chicharito is taken out of context, and top 10 players in Major League Soccer. We will also get to the Julian Gressel trade and break down a little bit of the U.S. men's national team roster. And Jake, before we even get into the thick of it, a pretty heartbreaking day for the sporting world.
Yeah, we lost a good one today. We lost an all-timer. We lost a GOAT.
Yes, we
Kobe
did. Bryant,
dead at the age of 41 after a helicopter crash earlier this afternoon. I don't know about you guys. Kind of weird. I was a little shook after I saw that because
41.
41. You grew up. I know you two are a little bit younger than me. I'm 30. I believe you both are 24. He grew up, I kind of watched his entire career, and now he's retired, and now he's dead. And that's kind of weird. It's a very weird feeling. So, condolences to his family, friends, that whole thing. I'm at a loss for words with that one. So,
yeah.
Forever, I guess we're going to truck on with this show, Mamba mentality.
Yeah, I did want to add.
Seamless transition.
Yeah.
There's really no way. There's really no way to transition out of that. I'm not sure if you've watched the red carpet, the Grammys thing, but watching them transition out of it it's a train wreck. So.
Train wreck. Well, I was just going to say, I know my generation, I saw this tweet, so I'm kind of ripping it from somebody out there in the Twitter's world, but just we grew up in the generation where anytime you took a shot, whether it is laundry into a basket, trash into a trash bin, or even throwing an orange into the basket at Walmart, you always sat there and in the back of your mind, maybe you said it out loud, you just said Kobe. And that will definitely live on. But I just remember doing that. You just naturally just said Kobe anytime you took a shot. It's strange how things can come and go in a flip of a coin. People can lose loved ones. So thoughts and prayers with the Bryant family. And let's move on. Let's talk about some soccer, guys. And Tom, Toronto has a very interesting storyline going on this past week. You wrote it on MLSsoccer.com, but Toronto captain Michael Bradley set to undergo ankle surgery following a severe injury during the 2019 MLS Cup loss to the Seattle Sounders. GM Ali Curtis told the media this past week Michael Bradley is set to be out for 4 months. This is a big loss for Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, they're losing their captain. The good news is at least that they're well stocked in the midfield, and they have a number of young talent who benefit. The only good thing really to come from this is that Liam Fraser is going to get minutes, and maybe Noble Okelo is going to get some minutes in the first team. But Bradley, if he doesn't return until until June, which is reasonable, that would be for a little bit more than 4 months. So you never know exactly how long this takes. He'll miss exactly half of the season, so it's pretty tough.
Yeah, it puts Toronto in a pickle, or in a bind at least. And Jake, the GM, Ali Curtis, had some interesting comments regarding this situation.
Yeah, Curtis was quoted as saying, Michael is going to have surgery Tuesday in New York City. He suffered a very severe and complicated ankle injury against Seattle in MLS Cup. We didn't disclose that publicly because the details of his injury or injuries of players, you don't necessarily disclose publicly that you're really just working with the media or medical team and working with the player to try to get them to return and to play. And in Michael's case, he had an x-ray after the game in Seattle, and then we got back to Toronto. He got a couple of scans.
So the question is really, why the delay on surgery, right? If this happened at MLS Cup, why didn't he have surgery the week following? Because it could have been very easily set up. The offseason's right in front of Michael Bradley. And the club had hoped to avoid surgery and rehab the injury. Quote, he stayed in Toronto for a tremendous part of the offseason, and we really tried to work with him on his rehab as much as possible to try to get him to a point where he's returning to full strength, Curtis said. Quote, he continued, quote, ankles are finicky. Sometimes they just tend to take longer to recover. You've got to be careful in those types of injuries, and surgery is the last resort typically in terms of what you do. So the question really is, did Toronto mishandle the situation? What did the doctors know? What did Toronto hope to accomplish? Because MLS Cup was about 2 months ago. Am I wrong there as far as that timeline?
Probably closer to 3 at this point.
Yeah.
So 3 months, he could have been ready in the next 6 weeks, pretty much at the start of the season. So if you ask me, I don't know. Was this Bradley's decision? Was this the front office decision? Was it the medical staff at Toronto? There's a lot of question marks, and there seems to Toronto and Bradley played the situation poorly here. They really cost themselves half the season with one of the better players in Major League Soccer, one of the important. He's the captain of Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just difficult to really lay down, as you said, whose decision it was. And it is just the basic understanding of whenever you can avoid surgery, you avoid surgery. So obviously the medical staff were confident that they'd be able to rehab it. And obviously they didn't see any improvement. So they went ahead and had surgery. So I get it. I get why Josie's mad about it. Taylor Twellman said on ETR, Extra Time from MLS Digital, that he, knowing what he knows about Bradley, and he said that he couldn't really say this, with 100% inside info, but what he knows about Bradley is that Bradley, if they said, hey, time for surgery, he would have done it immediately. And like you said, he wouldn't have missed that much time. But, you never know because we're not doctors. And
right. But
if you can avoid surgery, avoid it.
I guess so. I guess I don't talk to enough doctors to know and enough athletes to know. Obviously, surgery always sucks. It's a long rehab process. Typically, the following year, half the season, you are still trying to recover from the surgery and trying to get back to full strength. But Jake, it just screws with Toronto. And to make it even more complicated, Josie Altidore seems rather frustrated with the club over this handling of Michael Bradley and his ankle.
Yeah, I mean, can you blame him? I mean,
well, it depends. It really depends, though.
Like, first of all, on the Michael Bradley front, because I didn't get a chance to chime in here on this. Like, to me, I don't understand how we couldn't have gotten to mid-December, end of December, and said, yeah, this isn't progressing very well. We need to get surgery ASAP. And now you're looking at, maybe you're coming back in May instead of June or July. So for me, it doesn't make any sense. And you look at this team last year, think of how slow of a start they got off to last year. I mean, they weren't a playoff team, I don't believe, by June, by the midway point of the season. And they went on that incredible run by the end of July through August and September, where I think they rattled off, 10 straight unbeaten. So to me, looking at this roster, looking at this team, I mean, looking at what, Josie's comments where he's clearly frustrated with how this whole thing was handled, I almost feel like Toronto's window is closing, if you will. And I think Josie may realize that and say, why are we handling it this way?
You think he's frustrated because he knows that this is going to set them back for half the season and make it much more difficult come playoff time.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, look, he's going to have surgery on his ankle. July is not going to roll around and Michael Bradley's going to be in game form. it might take until mid-August for Michael Bradley to, assuming he comes back in beginning or middle of July, it might take a full month before Michael Bradley is ready to play a full 90 and he has knocked the rust off and he's back to himself. I mean, this is a massive deal for Toronto, and I can totally see why Josie Altidore is upset about it.
Okay, hold on. 4 months would be mid-May. I don't know where you're getting August from. I don't know where you're getting, and then it might take another month for him to get to 100%. 4 months from the surgery time is mid-May, and I even said maybe it'll take a little longer. Who knows? But what if it takes shorter?
Yeah,
but
it
gonna
just
be fine. They have Josie, they have Pozuelo, they have Omar Gonzalez, they have Chris Mavinga, they have 2 homegrowns in central midfield, which already includes Jonathan Osorio and Marky Delgado, a Canadian international and an MLS veteran. They're gonna be okay. The sky's not falling.
Well, the sky's not falling, but the problem. Well, here's my concern is you say mid-May, but if we're honest, it takes it. He could come back, he could play, but he's just not going to be the same. It takes.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
Because I know. Well, you just look at player history with surgery. Yeah, you had J.J. Watt, who should have, who had a season-ending injury, come back in the playoffs. Yeah, you have those cases, but most cases with the ankle, just look at Gordon Hayward, the Celtics. He's not been the same since he busted his ankle.
Came out of his body.
Yeah, but we don't know what this case is with Michael Bradley.
Then yeah, you're right. We don't know. Then why are you assuming that it's the worst?
Because ankles have typically been one of the hardest parts of the body to recover from. And traditionally, every athlete, when they have an ankle injury, it nags them. It really does. And you're just not the same.
That's worse than an Achilles injury? I just think that these are a little reckless here.
Well, I just think the ankle is just a very hard part of the body that just takes more time than the given 4 months that doctors say. He might be recovered at 4 months, but I think my big concern is fine. He could be on the football pitch mid-May, but is he going to be the Michael Bradley that we saw last season or what we've seen in MLS? When is that Michael Bradley going to come back out? And if the argument's well, it doesn't really matter as long as you have him playoff time because Toronto have the depth to do it, fine. That's fine.
I mean, that's generally where I'd lean. But and again, the doctors are for the 4 months they're baking that into recovery time. He's not gonna just step onto the training pitch in 4 months and then continue recovery. The timeline includes when he's gonna be ready to play significant minutes in a game. So I mean, yeah, I suppose a little bit, but. Again, that's May. It's not August or September. He'll have at least half of the season.
Now, Jake, let you chime in here before we get to a break.
I guess what I would take away from is it seems. Look, I'm not. We've said this a couple of times already in the last 5 or 10 minutes. We're not doctors. To me, though, this whole situation just feels like it was botched by TFC. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a doctor. I don't see how this whole thing played out, but ankles are tricky. And look, okay, May. So we're saying May. I still think you're looking at, even if he comes back mid-May, I think there's going to be a lot of rust for him to knock off, and I think that could be troubling for TFC. But they did it last year. They put themselves on the 8 ball, mid-season last year, and they found a way out of it. So
they got to MLS Cup.
So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. All right, Tom, I'll give you a final word here before on the situation with Michael Bradley. And more importantly, with Josie Altidore, what should Hercules Gomez had a tweet, quote, hearing that as a result of Josie Altidore's public criticism of TFC's handling of Michael Bradley's ankle injury last season, the club is considering a move for the U.S. men's national team striker.
Go ahead.
No, I would say, is Toronto actually going to move on from their star player?
Who's going to take on that salary is the thing. And Ollie Curtis and the president, Bill Manning, have their public view on the stance on the matter is that they're expecting him to be with the club. I think that they're just trying to kind of let this go or whatever. But I mean, I don't blame Josie for being mad. I mean, I don't. He's someone who's going to voice his opinion. I respect that when athletes are honest. All we ever ask for is athletes to be honest, except for when the honesty doesn't, jive with what we want to hear, and then we're saying, oh, is he a distraction? Should he have said that? No,
right.
I'm not gonna get mad at somebody for being honest, but also I also don't blame Toronto for not being happy that he said this publicly either, because this is the second time that he's criticized the club, particularly the medical department. But I just hope that this leads to let's say that Josie misses a late chance in an April game and they tie instead of win. I hope that the medical staff get interviewed and say, yeah, Josie didn't do good enough today. That's just not good enough. I'm disappointed in him today.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. It's unlikely that he gets moved. I think it'd be a dumb move for TFC to move on because of some public criticism. Deal with it in-house. Don't just let the player be. Anyway, there you go. Tom makes his Uncle Sam's Soccer podcast debut. A little feisty. Let us know what you think of the situation in Toronto and how big in trouble is Toronto with the loss of Michael Bradley. And that return date, when is it going to come? How will Michael Bradley be? Let us know at Uncle Sam Soccer Pod. You can even email us at unclesamsoccerpodcast@gmail.com. We want to hear your thoughts. Anyway, up next, let's get to the controversy in LA over Chicharito's retirement comments.
Alrighty, boys, let's talk some Chicharito. He had some very controversial, people took it as controversial comments earlier this week when the vlog of him having this phone call, this conversation with his dad announced or telling his father he's going to leave Sevilla for LA Galaxy and MLS. And Chicharito essentially stated to his father, "This is the beginning of my retirement," and that got soccer Twitter on fire. That set it on fire a little bit because what do some of these MLS haters refer to MLS as?
A retirement league.
Retirement league. There you go, retirement league. And that, like I said, that set soccer Twitter ablaze. So, first of all, guys, Did anybody? Did either of you see that video and think, "Ooh, this is a bad look for Chicharito"?
Well, you sent it to me, and you're like, we kind of looked at it and we're like, yikes! And then you said, wait, you got to watch the full thing.
Right, because I had the initial reaction that everybody did too. I saw it and I was like, "Oh, geez, like this is some bad PR for MLS, where you have a player essentially stating, this is the beginning of my retirement."
Yeah, I'm generally cynical about most things, particularly like the Mexican media is known to be a very difficult one. Part of the reason why Carlos Vela isn't playing for the national team. So I'm generally cynical when I see headlines like that seem like they're sensationalized. And obviously it turns out that this one was.
Yeah. Well, so the big silver lining I take from this is you had Ibrahimovic come to the Los Angeles Galaxy, and he basically decided, I'm just going to take 2 massive poops on this league. I do not want to waste my time anymore or any longer in this league, for this club. And here comes Chicharito, a complete change of pace when it comes to to the style of how Ibrahimovic carries himself on and off the field to Chicharito. A lot of us welcome, but then inadvertently Chicharito creates the same massive drama, the Twitter that the soccer world had to. Now he went on Alexi Lawless's. He was interviewed by Alexi Lawless, and he had comments on this retirement things. And I want to go through it because I think he says a lot of good stuff regarding MLS, Liga MX, what he's going to bring to the Galaxy. So we're going to break that through for this segment. And listeners, let us know, how excited are you for Chicharito? Because I think this was one of my favorite players watching at Manchester United when he spent his time there. I love Chicharito. Jake, Tom, I don't know about you two, but I'll ask Tom first. Where would you rate Chicharito as far as growing up and watching him and just seeing him with Manchester United and then obviously spending some time with Real Madrid?
I'm a Liverpool fan, so at every turn I tried to mentally play down his achievements. They're like, he's not that good. All he is a poacher. He doesn't do anything else or whatever. But, when he left United, you could start to appreciate him a little bit more. He's going to be awesome in MLS. He's an awesome player. He's clearly motivated. Like, disregard whatever the miscommunication, I suppose, or the misinterpretation of his, sincere moment with his father, who's also a former professional, about the whole retirement thing. He's motivated. He's not coming here to be about Chicharito, and like that, as you alluded to, that he's just the inverse of Zlatan Ibrahimovic when it comes to personality. Like, Chicharito, all he does is talk. He's talking about winning the entire time. He barely said "I" at his introduction press conference. I think he's just going to be fantastic.
Jake, this is better for the league, right? You did not like how Ibrahimovic would rip on the league, and now you have Chicharito who's wanting to promote the league, saying it's good. Look, basically, people in Liga MX down in Mexico should be really worried about what is happening with Major League Soccer.
Yeah, I mean, all the guys on the internet who took what Chicharito said earlier this week about it's the beginning of my retirement were the same people who took all of Zlatan Ibrahimovic's comments and said, see what he's saying? This is why MLS sucks. This is why U.S. soccer sucks. And I just thought that all those comments Zlatan made painted a very bad picture of the league for people who weren't fans of MLS or were casual fans of MLS. And I think his comments gave people a reason to not watch MLS, especially when he's making comments about Carlos Vela. When I was Vela's age, I was playing at AC Milan. He's playing at LAFC. Look at me. I'm Zlatan Ibrahimovic. So I think it's very refreshing that Chicharito is trying to, I don't know if deflect's the right word, but trying to say, no, this isn't the beginning of my retirement. I didn't come here to retire. I came here to win championships. He talks about how nobody in Mexico wants to admit that MLS is up and coming, and no one wants to look at what they're doing here. Know the great things this league is doing.
Let's get to the audio.
My first question, a very important question. How are you enjoying your retirement? Is it going well?
I knew that question, and I answered about that in Spanish, and I couldn't do it in English. Guys, come on, you know that it's the beginning of the retirement, not because of the league. It's because I have 31 years old. What do you want me to say? When I'm 20, you want me to say, what? I want to retire, and now when I'm 32, I'm going to say, no, it's still 40 years to go to play. I haven't seen one player, well, one in Japan, that he's been playing 53 years old, in the whole history.
Don't you love how he brings up the player that's 50 and playing in Japan? It's good. It's a good line. He did his research. He was well prepped. His PR team, whatever, told him like, here, cite them this example. But on a serious note, does he have a point? 31. He has to kind of look towards the end and kind of set up his life. Where do I want to be?
I mean, he's still in his prime. I mean, I get it. The way that I interpret all of this is that it's true. Just the European phase of his career is over, and I think there's no harm in that, and that's not an indictment of the LA Galaxy, and that's not an indictment of MLS. Like I don't know. I think that it's just a lot being made of one line, and it wasn't the focus or the purpose of that video. Like,
sure, yeah.
People are completely missing the point, and thankfully, a lot of people around like MLS Twitter circles were saying like, look at how awesome this video was. Like, look at how it was a moment that he shared with the world that he had with his dad. Like, it was touching. He was introspective. He was deep, and people were like, you said retirement. You suck. MLS sucks.
Yeah, that's right. Ibrahimovic went.
And then they followed up that comment, Tom, with hashtag ProRel for USA too. I mean, that's no. I mean, I agree with Tom. There. I don't know. I find this, like everything Chicharito's been saying so far in light of what has happened. I find it a little more refreshing.
It's honest.
It's honest. Yeah. It's refreshing, and I feel like in today, just sports in general, you don't get too many moments like that where you get just an honest moment. I mean, Tom, you know it better than Steven or I do. I mean, sometimes when you're interviewing players, you just get the cliche after cliche or whatever BS answer constantly. This is refreshing.
Yeah, again, it was really cool. I mean, and it's just one of those things. Like, if you don't hear it, then it wasn't made for you. Like, if you're going into that and like you're looking for a reason to get mad about something, and like you're just completely missing the point.
Well, he has some more good stuff to say.
Like, he didn't retire. I'm closer to retire. Even if I decide to stay in Europe, if I was 31, 32, and 33.
But you're a smart man, right? You understand the word retirement. You understand the reaction, right?
Exactly. I understand the reaction, but I'm not in the same. I don't support that way of thinking, because a war is a war, and why you take it in the negative extreme? There's another positive extreme too. Imagine if I will decide to go to Mexico as well, and if I say the same one, the Liga MX is not like a retirement league in Latin America, right? So it's just I'm close to it. The thing is, when you say something, it's like people is a very thin skin, so you need to like over-explain, like onions. Take all of them, so all the layers.
Thank you, Chicharito. Thank you. Oh, that's such common sense. People take things out of context. Obviously, he says people are thin-skinned, but then he's completely right. Then you have to sit here and spend 2 hours explaining to the person what you really meant. Like, I think Chicharito should have said, look, it's not what I meant. And now he's trying to, like, explain it over and over. And I think some people could take this in the negative and go, like, look, he's spending 2 hours trying to justify himself. But frankly speaking, as we mentioned, he's honest about the situation with his father. Making the leap to Major League Soccer at his age, just like it was for Michael Bradley, Josie Altidore, Carlos Vela, you name any other player, it's a risk because MLS is still somewhat of an unknown, and it's also an opportunity. It's a different opportunity. I'm sure, Tom, you've talked to a lot of players who come from other parts of the world, and they marvel at the opportunity to live in America, to play in this growing league, and have this opportunity to play football in a different context and grow something.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but I even think that that's going one step too far, because Chicharito's not playing for the Galaxy because he wants to live in Los Angeles. Like, it's just the next move for his career. Like, how many clubs has he played for in Europe over the past 5 years between Leverkusen and
West Ham, Sevilla, Real Madrid, United? He
had a good stint in Leverkusen, and then he went to West Ham, and he didn't get consistent playing time. When he played, he scored goals, and then he moved to Sevilla, and over half a season, he didn't get much of any playing time. And as of a couple weeks ago, he was hopeful to still like fight for his place and break into the team. And then another striker came back from injury, and Chicharito, one game wasn't even on the bench, and another game was an unused sub, and another forward went in. So like it was a couple weeks ago where he was like, all right, like it's not going to work out for me at Sevilla. So if you're him, like what are you going to do? Go to another like mid-table, slightly better than mid-table La Liga team, or go to another like top half Bundesliga team? And like what's the point of doing that again and again and again at that point? Like why wouldn't you come for a new challenge?
Right. All right, let's continue here. He's got one more good stuff regarding MLS and Liga MX.
So they can understand. This is not the league of retirement. That's why I came, because if I was, I will be honest, I'll tell you, yes. Probably 20 years ago when they was building it, yes. But right now, I even tell it, this league is growing so much. And I said it before as well when I was in Sevilla, when I did everything, the presentation. This league is growing so much, and my country doesn't want to see it and doesn't want to learn from it. Because in this period of time, MLS is growing so much comparing what Mexican League has grown in the same period of time. So I understand what the word means. I completely understand. But I didn't came to retire. The only thing is I'm close to retirement. Of course, it's like even LeBron. LeBron has one of the best...
I don't know, guys. Do you sense the worry down from the Mexican Federation, Liga MX, regarding MLS? Or is Chicharito here just kind of like, okay, I'm going to try to spin this even more positive and just kind of put myself into a good grace?
That I kind of feel towards the end there he was fluffing it a little bit. I don't know if you guys picked up on that. I mean, maybe you can look. I don't know. It's so hard to say, because it almost seemed like he over explained it. Like over justified his comments. Like, look at how great MLS is. I'm even gonna go as far as to take a dump on Liga MX and just say this. Like, they don't want to admit how great MLS is, and whatever. You can have your opinions on where MLS ranks and between Liga MX and MLS itself, but it just, to me, it almost felt like he was fluffing it up a little bit. I'm not sure if you two felt that same way.
You put it perfectly. I like that take.
Yeah. And I know we're up against it, but Tom, I really want to get your take on this. The dynamic that Chicharito brings to the Galaxy and what he wants to accomplish at the Galaxy and what he's going to represent is going to be such a gigantic different understanding from the fan to Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Here's what he said to Alalas when he was asked, what does he bring to the league?
Why they should come and watch Chicharito play?
Why? Because if you like football, and if you like a guy who gives everything every single time, you're going to see a lot of passion, you're going to see a lot of conviction, you're going to see a lot of confidence about what he believes. So you're going to see that in the pitch. And then, of course, he's going to try to score as many goals as he can, obviously. But you will see that's pure passion. When you see horses running over there in competitions and you see that passion of just running, that's what you're going to see in Javier.
All right. Well, I hope you do well on the field, and I hope you enjoy your time here.
I hope that.
Yeah. Do we... This is going to be a whole different style and game plan for the Galaxy now that they have a player that seems to be committed to the game plan, and also not one player who's going to dump on his own players midway through the game.
Yeah, it'll be completely different. It'll be fun to watch the Galaxy defend 11 on 11 again. It'll be fun to see what Guillermo Barros-Schelottos actually does with his tactics, because he caught a lot of flack even dating back to his time with Boca that he was really good at, like his tactics were like simplistic, and he was good at trying to put his best players in good positions and giving them the freedom to play. And last year he caught it because no matter what he did, they couldn't stop conceding goals. This year we're going to find out if he really is a good tactician or not, because last year, what can you do if you're playing, like, you can't press, and even when you're sitting deep, you're not getting anything from your number 9 at all. And going forward, you're lumping crosses into the box because it looks like that Zlatan's going to burn a hole through you with his eyes if you don't throw him a hopeless long ball. Like
even if you throw that hopeless ball, he's gonna burn a hole through your heart because it's not quote unquote world class. He gets angry either way.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, Jake, final thoughts here with Chicharito and his comments taken out of context and what he said to allow us.
No, I just think, like I said, I think it's refreshing. I think, like I said, U.S. Soccer wanted a reason that side of U.S. Soccer Twitter or the internet wanted a reason to be angry at MLS, and they grasped onto this and made the retirement league thing, brought that whole thing back into play.
Right?
Hashtag ProRel for USA. I will say, and we talked about this earlier this week in text message between us three, is I think that with LA Galaxy, when you have a player like Chicharito, who doesn't sound like he's the guy who's going to dump all over his teammates in the league and everybody like Zlatan would, I think you can say tactics aside. I think that is just a positive for the LA Galaxy, is that players don't feel as though they're not good enough to be in the same field with Chicharito like they probably felt playing alongside Zlatan Ibrahimovic. So I think that'll be a huge plus for the Galaxy this season.
Absolutely. All right, now up next, we're going to be talking about some of the best players in Major League Soccer. Who are they? Why? Hey guys, quick question for you two. Completely off topic, but did you see, I believe it was for Celtic, they had a 16-year-old play in the game this past weekend, and there's a photo of the 16-year-old next to the 26-year-old, and it looks like the 26-year-old could be his dad.
No, I didn't see that.
It's you have to look at it twice. You're like, wait, that guy. First of all, the 16-year-old. I'm trying to pull up the names here. I unfortunately am slacking with the names, but the 16-year-old, listeners, looks like he could be a ball boy or could be the son of the player. It is unbelievable.
Well, how kind of on the same subject here? How old the Polish guy, the Fire bringing in here? I believe he's like in his early 20s, but he looks like you could say like maybe early to mid 40s.
Ooh.
Have you guys seen that?
Ooh.
I have to pull up his name. Sorry, this is also like this is just bad podcasting in general. Somebody made a comment on Twitter that I thought was really funny of a signing the Chicago Fire man. I thought he was Polish, might have been Barrick, where they basically said, can't tell if this guy is like 40 some odd years old or in his early 20s. I just thought it was really funny. Like he just like that typical like Eastern European face. Like, God, that guy just looks super old. I'm sorry to be like rude to Eastern Europeans. I don't mean to do that,
well,
but I just remember seeing that, and it kind of reminds me of the Celtic talk here with the 16-year-old.
Yeah. Well, 16-year-old Karma Moko Dembele and 26-year-old Christopher Julian showed showed the club supporters love after a W, and they're clapping. But first of all, there's like 2 feet of a height difference, and then the 16-year-old looks so young. I mean, congratulations for playing at Celtic at 16. But my goodness, I looked at the photos like, this can't be real. This is Photoshop. But no, it wasn't. And, so we were supposed to talk about the best players in Major League Soccer. But I actually wanted to comment on this because we're a little bit short on time in this segment. MLSsoccer.com, Andrew Wiebe, or is it Weeb?
Wiebe
had his top 10 DPs all time, and he has Chicharito number 2 behind David Beckham. Or biggest signings. Is Chicharito that big of a signing, or does it really depend on what he does on the pitch?
Both, yeah. I mean, I believe that Wiebe wrote this at the time of their signings. Like, obviously, that's why Joseph Martinez isn't there. This isn't best signings. This isn't
biggest. This is biggest signings.
But yeah, it's a completely different discussion. And yeah, I mean, I generally agree with him. We could split hairs on pretty much it. Obviously, one, David Beckham, and that's not up for debate. And then after that, like personally, I'd agree with Wiebe. I'd have Chicharito at number 2, especially in front of Zlatan. Like, while Zlatan is more of a global brand, like Chicharito is just so perfect for this league and that city.
Yeah, that city, it works. I just think the Ibrahimovic signing is just a little bit bigger. Still, I really do. I think he brought a lot of eyeballs to the league, worldwide. Chicharito brings a different audience to the league. He ignites a lot of the people who already watch the league. But Ibrahimovic and Chicharito are two different. I just think Zlatan is number 2 on this list that Wiebe has behind David Beckham, and everyone else you can stack however you want. I don't care. I just find it striking that Chicharito is the second biggest signing the league has ever seen.
I guess also because he's 31 and they signed him for $8 or $10 million, whatever the fee ended up being. Zlatan came on a free transfer when he was 37. So I think that's why it would tip it to Chicharito for me.
Yeah, I agree with Chicharito being behind Beckham and being in front of Zlatan. I don't have any problems with that. Zlatan definitely is a global brand, or a more global brand than Chicharito, but I think the Chicharito signing, like Tom said, for this league, for this country, and that market, I think is it's such a bigger signing than Zlatan in my eyes. I mean, think of all the Mexican Americans or the Mexican national team fans that are going to be watching MLS now because of Chicharito. Zlatan wasn't tapping into that.
Yeah, but I've heard, Jake, from our listeners who've DM'd us and who send in messages, I've heard mixed results on whether or not he actually taps into the Mexican-American Spanish audience, because some people have mixed opinions about it. As Tom alluded to earlier in the show, the Mexican media and the treatment of Mexican stars, it's very touch and go. Obviously, Carlos Vela being prime example.
Yeah, I mean, even with all this, like we're at the end of it, we're splitting hairs here. Whether we're calling the second or third biggest signing, again, I generally lean Chicharito, but I'm not going to die on this hill if I won't call you an idiot for having Zlatan too.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But Tom, then what impact does Chicharito make? Does he bring in more of a TV audience that the league that craves because the TV deal is coming up here?
Yeah, so it's not just more viewers; it's the market that is so valuable is the Mexican American market, because you can look at all of the TV ratings, like Liga MX games still outpace even the Premier League in TV ratings in this country. The more that you get that viewership on an MLS, it's going to be huge, and that's why it makes all sense that MLS and Liga MX are pairing for various things like Leagues Cup. Liga MX wants the structure, stability, and the American market that comes with that any type of partnership or whatever, and MLS wants those fans to get hooked on their league, and I think Chicharito, the Galaxy said that in the first 4 or 5 days, whatever it was, after the club signed Ibrahimovic and Chicharito, season ticket sales went up from Chicharito double to Ibrahimovic. I didn't say that very well, but essentially Chicharito sold more tickets than sold more season tickets than Ibrahimovic.
Right. Plus, I mean, think about it, Jake. He's in the market where you have Carlos Vela and LAFC who've kind of dominated as far as the regular season goes. Now, matchups between the Galaxy and LAFC, the results have been different. LAFC obviously have the biggest win coming in the playoffs, the most important win, I should say. But the Galaxy were also competing for headlines, for storylines in their own city with a competitor, 11, 13 miles down the road?
Yeah, I mean they're competing for eyeballs within their own city. So I mean Chicharito is going to do that. Chicharito is going to, like I said, the Mexican American audience, that they weren't watching Carlos Vela, maybe they'll watch Chicharito now. And like Tom alluded to, obviously there's a lot more interest in the Galaxy now than there was this time last year, because season ticket sales are through the roof with this announcement. So this is a massive signing for the league. This is a massive signing for the Galaxy, and it's a massive signing for that derby too. That's going to be a super fun derby to watch, I think, when they play later on this spring. But coming up next here on the show, we're going to talk top 10 Americans in MLS, and later on, top 10 MLS players. Stay tuned.
Alrighty, listeners, at Unc Sam Soccer Pod, question of the day. Question of the day. Who are the best 10 players in Major League Soccer? Let us know. And also, this is an important note you got to include. What is your metric? How are you judging these players by? Because Jake and I have a pretty big disagreement on when we talked about the 10 best players in Major League Soccer, and we judged it differently. And Tom, you have a whole different system that you put together when it came to the best players in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, you guys start just so we don't get confusing.
Okay, cool. We'll start. Tom, chime in when you want, because Jake, you and I.
Actually, you know what? Let's play a game. Let's play a game here.
Okay.
You and I will go through our top 10 lists, and then Tom can decide who has the better top 10 list. How about that?
Oh, no.
And that way, Tom doesn't have to commit to making his own list. He can just say, hey, I think this list sounds better. Or, hey, how does that sound, Tom? Does that sound better? Does that sound a little bit more political?
Look, as long as I can just sit from above and judge you guys, I'm good with that.
Yeah, go ahead. You can judge away. Do you want me to start? I can start.
Fine, go, Jake.
I mean, this was really in no particular order. I tried to do it best I could. At the top of the list, it's Carlos Vela. I don't know how you can't beat Carlos Vela. After that, Joseph Martinez down there in Atlanta. 3, and I know Steven kind of had alluded to this when talking about the biggest signings in MLS. I have Chicharito, even though he hasn't even kicked a ball yet in the league. I think he has to be up there, right?
Well,
you can't not put him
LA
up
Galaxy
there.
did spend a pretty penny for the guy.
Real quick, let the record show, last year I wrote about the top number 10s in MLS, and I put P.T. Martinez at first. Yeah, that hasn't aged well yet. So.
Yeah.
Do we need to old takes expose you?
Hopefully not. I got to a lot of Seattle fans were very mad in the moment, so it wasn't even an old take at the time.
Yeah.
4 my list, NYCFC's Heber. 5, Christian Pavone. 6, Max Morales. 7, Diego Rossi. And then at 8, Eduard Atuesta. 9, Ike Opara. And rounding out the top 10, Diego Chara of the Portland Timbers.
All right, well, Jake, you and I don't disagree. 1, 2, Carlos Vela, Joseph Martinez. Then I have Maxi Morales, Chicharito, Charles Gil, Josie Altidore, NYCFC's Herbert, Diego Rossi, Jordan Morris. Yes, he makes my list. And then Ike Opara. Obviously, he was voted one of the best defenders last season. But, Jake, you and I had a pretty big disagreement over the name Jordan Morris making my list for the simple fact that I'm judging Morris on his playoff performances. And you thought, I don't know if that's a fair metric whatsoever, but we live in a playoff system. We make a pretty big point in any American sport that it's what you do in the postseason that really counts. And when you can perform in the postseason, what you did in that regular season, doesn't really matter. He sacked up.
God, we have a okay. So I can't. The argument I want to use here, and I'm afraid to use it because I know who Tom's favorite football team is, and this guy's been in the news this last week, and I think he knows where I'm going with this. Outside of two playoff performances, would you look at Eli Manning and say that's an all-time great, or that's a Hall of Fame quarterback?
I'm gonna angrily hang up in a second. Tread lightly.
Okay, no, but this is a serious question.
He is, Jake. He is a Hall of Famer.
Because of what? How many games?
What he did in the postseason. He had unbelievable numbers. Because of just an 8-game sample size is literally what Eli Manning's Hall of Fame case is based around, right? I mean, can we all kind of agree upon that? Like, no one's going to look at any of those other two. And if you take out those 2 seasons where they won the Super Bowls, you look at Eli Manning, you're never like average quarterback.
You never think, oh, he's just like his brother Peyton. You know, look, Eli Manning, he won 2 Super Bowls. He was great. He won the MVP. We stand Eli Manning on this podcast, Tom and I, because he took down the Patriots. But I just think basing a player like a ranking or trying to tell me how great a player is because of a small sample size because when it's October all of a sudden he plays really well, but for the previous 6 months I'm not saying Jordan Morris is bad, but I just think we put way too much emphasis on postseason performance instead of looking at the total body of work. And for me, he falls outside the top 10. I don't know. Like where do you fall on this category, on this stance? Because me and Stephen have had this argument before on the show with regular season to postseason, and how I like to look at the whole picture. Because we had this argument last year about
LAFC and then Seattle winning the cup. Yeah.
And I like the whole body of work, but Stephen just prefers the playoffs. So where do you stand on this?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you my reason for quickly, Tom. Is if we're going to put an emphasis on the playoffs, then we're going to make that matter. Then we should judge more heavily what the performance is in the playoffs. That's my argument. But where are you on this thing? And when we judge MLS players, how do we judge them from regular season to postseason, their performances?
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally kind of in between you guys. Like, I definitely think you have to weigh the playoff stuff, but small sample sizes can be cruel. Like, Carlos Vela was not very good in this year's the loss to Seattle. Like, he was good against the Galaxy, but if you're gonna do the whole playoff thing, like he wasn't great against Seattle. But obviously nobody's doubting that he's had the best season in league history last year, even though that he ended. And same thing with Eddie Atuesta. Like he was awful against Seattle. But that doesn't change the fact that he was one of the best players in the league last season. So it's somewhere in the middle, and I tend to, if this happens 3 years in a row for Atuesta, then you can start to like really make conclusions. If this happens 3 years in a row with Jordan Morris, where he absolutely comes alive in the playoffs, then yeah, it's a thing. But also Morris, like the second half of his season, he was awesome. Like he was one of the best wingers in the league. Like after he came back from the Gold Cup, and he was very good at the Gold Cup too. So I wouldn't put him in my top 10 for sure, but it is more than just one hat trick against FC Dallas.
Fair enough. Anyway, Tom, let's get to your best 11 for more of a positional balance. You have Bill Hamid in goal over Fry or who and a Turner?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I'm just gonna be that annoying dude who just rejects the construct and instead of answering the question you asked me, I'm gonna answer the question that I wish I was asked. So I went
creating
with the best
problems already on show number 50 minutes into the show. Unbelievable. Well, actually, it was more like 6 minutes in the show. Whatever, go.
But yeah, I mean, again, there is no standalone goalkeeper. Like I voted Matt Turner for goalkeeper of the year last year, but I didn't think that Vito Minone was the best keeper in the league, but I didn't lose any sleep over him winning it. Like there's like a handful of keepers that whether it's Bill Hamid, Stephen Fry, even Turner, Sean Johnson, like yeah, fair enough. Like I could see that. So I mean, just for me, I went with Hamid. Like I value shot stopping as my key value for a goalkeeper, which is weird in this day and age because players like Kepa for Chelsea gets bought because he's good at playing the ball with his feet, even though he's a below average shot stopper. Because why would goalies stop shots? I just think that Bill Hamid and same thing with Matt Turner are just two incredible shot stoppers.
Turner, I mean, in large part, kept the Revs alive last season. He was the reason why they were doing well.
Yeah, and inexplicably, Brad Friedel gave him the job in 2018. He played really well. Then he went into 2019 as the third string keeper. I don't understand. Like, it's one of the many things that was confounding about the Brad Friedel era.
Yeah. Jake, what award did I give him a couple years ago? Brad Friedel?
We made up, Tom, if you're not aware, Steven made up a bunch of mid-season awards and didn't want to just do your traditional mid-season award like mid-season MVP and Rookie of the Year and stuff like
stupid.
that. So Steven made up his own awards, and one of them was the FU award, which was given to Brad Friedel because, well, what was the reasoning at the time?
Because
I think you and I actually both gave it to Brad Friedel.
Yes, it was the beginning part of the tenure that went well for Brad Friedel with the Revolution when they were, I think, 4th or 5th in the E's with the Revs, yeah. And then it tanked. That was really old takes exposed. So, Tom, we could probably touch about the mile. Never mind. Actually, I was gonna say, can you talk about the center backs? Who are the better ones in Major League Soccer? You have a couple names here listed: Zimmerman, Ziegler, Para.
Well, that was just for my air quote others receiving.
Right.
Like for center backs, Miles Robinson and Iko Para, and I don't want this to sound like recency bias either because they were 1-2 in Defender of the Year voting last year. But like Miles Robinson is legit. Like he's awesome. Like I rate him ahead of Zimmerman and Ziegler, but those are also two very good players. But Iko Para is the unquestioned number one center back in the league.
Let me ask you with Zimmerman. I often get the sense, especially at FC Dallas, he did make quite a bit of boneheaded mistakes. Zimmerman, he's good, but something's missing with him. Do you ever think he can get that out of his mind and really become an elite center back that a lot of people thought he would be coming into his later 20s?
I think he is an elite center back in this league right now. I mean, I don't think it's an indictment that he might not be first choice with the national team. Like Iko Para has been with the national team since like before his injuries. Like same thing with Stephen Fry. Like Bill Hamid until this month. Like it's weirdly not necessarily like an indictment. Like just because Zimmerman isn't anchoring the national team, and just because he hasn't made a move to like Germany or England, like I think in MLS he's a very, very good center back and definitely one of the top 5 in the league.
Okay, that's fair. And then your outside backs are
Anton Tinnerholm and Kamara Lawrence. It was Anton Tinnerholm was straightforward. Obviously, I just think that, and I'm not putting Gressel in the right back category because I don't think that'd be fair. So Anton Tinnerholm is pretty much clear cut number one. Left back, I kind of agonized over it a little bit because Kamara Lawrence wasn't great last year, dealing with injuries and whatnot. But I think like on his day, and he has enough track record to prove that he's a consistent performer, that he's the best left back in the league. But Kai Wagner and Ryan Hollingshead are two guys that again I wouldn't die on this hill. Like it's not the take that I'm going to go to the grave with.
Our Armand Kafai has been calling for a Hollingshed to get an opportunity with the national team since there was a hole last season. But moving on, just give us your midfield and strikers just straightforward.
Edward Atuesta at DM, Jonah Dos Santos at number 8, Nico Ladero as number 10, and then Velo Rossi on the wings, and Joseph up top. There
you go. And Jake, you have any problems with Tom's best 11? It's our chance to kind of roast him.
No, I'm not going to roast Tom. I mean, he clearly knows way more about this league than I do, so I don't feel like I'm in any position to be roasting him about anything. My question to Tom is, because he never gave us an answer, Steven or I, who had a better top 10?
There we go. That's a good way to end the segment.
It's a good point. I'm going to go with Jake because I respect the fact that you have 2 defensive midfielders and a center back in there.
Oh, you just can't base your rankings off goals. You just can't do that. I'm sorry. You gotta have some defensive players in there, and that's. What do we say? What do we say so much about this league? Like if you have a dominant number 6, you're probably a really good team, right? Isn't that kind of just the rule of thumb in MLS? You need a really good number 6 to be a really good team. Look, man, I've watched so much Minnesota United since they came to MLS. And before Ozzie Alonso never had a good number 6. They were just dreadful defensively. And granted, they went and got Ike Opara too this last offseason. But you bring Ozzie Alonso in that mix, it just shored up everything. Everything's much better. You gotta have respect for the number 6s, those dirty guys that get in there. You know, they need some respect. They need some loving. That's why I had to put Atuesta and Char on the list.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna do that.
There you go. Hey, up next we're gonna talk about a trade that happened in Major League Soccer. It was a big one. Julian Gressel heading to DC United. Tom was on top of that story. Plus, and for a brief moment, we'll look at that Greg Berhalter's decision with his roster in the friendly against Costa Rica. We'll be back shortly.
And we're back for one final segment here on Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast. And listeners, question of the day. Who are the best 10 players in MLS right now? Let us know on Twitter at Uncle Sam's Soccer Pod. But Tom, we had a big trade earlier this week with Atlanta United sending Julian Gressel to DC United. What can you tell us about that deal and how did it go down?
Yeah, so Atlanta United have been in contract negotiations with Julian Gressel for the better part of the last year. Their first bona fide offer to him was almost a year ago, or was a year ago. It was last January. And it just kind of became apparent over the last few months that they weren't going to find common ground. From people I've talked to, it just kind of became clear that Julian's future was going to be outside of Atlanta, barring a last-minute change. And there's no ill will from Gressel and them. Like, he preferred to stay with Atlanta United, but he also wanted to get paid what he deserved. He's been on a rookie contract for the last 3 years, putting up essentially like DP production. So it made sense for everybody that there was a natural break here. Atlanta got an awesome deal, getting up to 1.1 million in TAM. Gressel's getting his new deal, and he's super excited to be at a team where obviously you're juiced that they thoroughly believe in him to trade so much allocation plus give him a new deal. So he's headed to DC United. From the people I've spoke to around the league, everyone kind of said that it was, Atlanta got a lot of allocation, but nobody really went as far to say that DC United vastly overpaid or this was a bad deal.
So they thought it was a solid trade.
Yeah, because again, nobody's doubting how good Julian Gressel is. The way that it was explained to me, which I think is best, is that you have to think about it because it's allocation money rather than like a transfer fee because it's an in-league move. You have to think about it as he's going to count towards the cap as 1.5 players, because that TAM that they traded to Atlanta, obviously they can't use that to buy anybody down. And now that he's getting a contract extension, he's a TAM player in and of himself. So you do that deal, one, if you have the enough allocation money in the bank that you're willing to part with, and two, that you feel strong about the rest of your team, which they do, particularly after their last two windows. They've quietly moved on from Wayne Rooney and Lucho Acosta pretty well. I mean, I guess the jury's still out until we find out what it looks like on the field. But, I mean, on paper, I feel like they've done a pretty good job.
Yeah. Just to recap exactly what Atlanta gets. They get $650,000 in 2020 worth of TAM, another $100,000 in 2021. Then, barring certain metrics that Gressel meets with DC United, they could get upwards of $350,000 in TAM. So there you get over the $1 million. And, yeah, I guess, Tom, it sounds like this wasn't a shocking trade for a lot of people in the league, as Atlanta and Gressel have been in talks over this contract for I guess what you're saying is well over a year.
Yeah, so it was surprising just because that it happened. No matter what, it was going to be a big deal because it's a blockbuster trade, honestly. But it wasn't like it came out of nowhere. Even Gressel's been public about the contract dispute. I mean, he wasn't, unprofessional, but if he asked about it, he would politely say no comment while saying, I don't want to talk about it because I'm going to get annoyed. So it's been like a poorly kept secret that this has been going on. And so it makes sense that the deal ended up happening. And then again, from who I've talked to, a couple teams, even over the summer, kicked the tires on possibly a trade. And Atlanta have been asking for at least $1 million that whole time, and they found somebody to pay it.
So, Tom, what's Atlanta going to go forward here? Now they have all this money. Do they pull the strings for someone else, or do you think they're going to stand pat and kind of run with what they got?
So, yeah, I mean, they're going to make a couple more additions, but they already did bring in Brooks Lennon, who I guess it would be a light version of Julian Gressel. He can do a lot of the similar things. He's a front-footed wingback, fullback, winger, versatile like Gressel was. And we'll see if he can thrive more with Atlanta than he did with RSL. And he was fine with RSL. He was good with RSL. It's just that, Gressel, again, is one of the best players over the last few years, particularly in chance creation. But Atlanta are definitely going to bring some players in. Carlos Bocanegra said that they want to bring in another number 8, even though they have already, permanently acquired Emerson Heineman. And some of this TAM, you'd imagine, is going to go to buying down that deal because there was a transfer fee and he's on a significant contract. So some TAM will go there, and then as they hope, if they land their top target, more TAM will go to, another Darlington Nagbe replacement.
Okay, I got a question for both of you guys.
No.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Anytime Jake says he has a question, it's always bad news.
Not really a question, but a thought. Maybe it's a question, too. We'll see how I phrase it. Am I the only one who thinks that so much hype is being made about this Julian Gressel move, but nobody's talking about LGP? I feel like that kind of got swept under the rug a little bit. Do you guys feel the same?
Yeah, that's a good point. But I guess because that Atlanta got their replacement center back from Liga MX an hour later. So I think that one was more straightforward, I guess. But still, yeah, you're right. It's a huge deal.
Yeah, the funny thing with Atlanta is they seem to be wielding and dealing. What's the term, Jake? Sorry.
Wheeling and dealing.
Wheeling and dealing. Every offseason, Atlanta's in the headlines for a major move. Why is Tom? You're obviously way more connected than we are. Is Atlanta just at the forefront with this, just understanding the soccer market and just wanting to continuously improve, or is it just the fact that that other clubs are just slower to react or are a little more conservative in their approach when it comes to signing and trading players or making moves?
I put LAFC there in the transfers part, considering the fact that they signed over the last 2 windows 4 players who were standouts at the U20 World Cup, which is awesome. But Atlanta, I guess that this is just what happens when success breeds this. Every year you have a lot of players overplaying their deal, and LGP, like Bocanegra explained it, that it's like what sucks about a salary cap is that you can't pay everybody. Like he said, teams around the world, like when you succeed and players deservingly ask for new contracts, you can pay them. Like they would want to have paid LGP and Gressel, theoretically at least, or who knows, if there wasn't a salary cap, maybe they wouldn't. They're just kind of hamstrung there. So LGP and his agent kind of said that they weren't asking to leave, but there was an understanding that if a club came that could significantly give him a raise, that they would be interested in pursuing that avenue. So Atlanta, to their credit, kept their word and found a suitable deal for all parties.
Well, boys. I mean, Atlanta United, they're always interesting every off season. And speaking of interesting, maybe uninteresting, I guess, depending on who you ask. This is also a very terrible segue. Greg Berhalter has named his 22-man roster out of their Costa Rica friendly this coming Saturday at 2:55 p.m. Central Time. And on that roster, we'll run through it quickly here. We only have a couple more minutes. Sean Johnson, Bill Hamid, and Matt Turner are your goalies. Julian I can't say his last name. Araujo, Reggie Cannon, Chase Gasper, Justin Glad, Aaron Long, Mark McKenzie, Sam Vines, and Walker Zimmerman are your defenders. And your forwards, Paul Areola, Jesus Ferreira, Jonathan Lewis, Yuli Yanez, and Jossie Zardes.
That's your boy.
Jossie Zardes, my guy. We stand Jossie Zardes in this podcast here, Tom. And real quickly, I forgot the midfielders.
Where
Brendan
are they?
Aronson, Christian Kappas, Brian Cayo, Sebastian Leggett, Brandon Cervania, and Jackson Ewell make up the midfield. I forgot to copy and paste them onto the doc. I apologize. But there they are. That is the 22-man roster for the U.S. men's national team against Costa Rica later this week. And Steven, who are you looking forward to the most to see?
Well, frankly, I'm not that big into this friendly when it comes off the January training camp. It's important, but I honestly don't really care for it that much. What I do worry about with this U.S. men's national team is, are we getting the youth implemented into the system, and are they playing? And this is an important stat. Only 2 players have more than 20 caps on this roster. That is key. This is what you want to see in a meaningless friendly. Play the freaking kids. Because what is Greg Berhalter? What is the big thing around Greg Berhalter and this federation? They want to take their time. They have a plan. Greg Berhalter has a plan. Okay? It's not going to happen overnight. He has this plan. Apart from the World Cup qualifying, he has time. Really, this is a build to 2022, but deep down, Alexi Lawless said it several months ago, it's really about 2026. It's about when the World Cup gets hosted in this country. Do we have a team that can compete for the Final Four? And this is good. You have a bunch of kids, a bunch of youngsters, a bunch of newbies on this team, and hopefully they get some experience and they get comfortable, and Berhalter can finally build his foundation.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's about building the foundation. I'm hoping that Greg Berhalter isn't just looking to 2026 and that there is a focus to 2022. And Tom, looking at this roster, any surprises that jump out to you? Any guys that on this list that you weren't expecting to see?
I mean, not really. And like you said, it's about kind of playing your kids, and the January camp is limiting as is because essentially it's just MLS guys. With Yuli, he's with Wolfsburg's second team, so they obviously didn't mind letting him go because he's not missing any Bundesliga games, and he's going to get better experience here than rather with the second team or the youth team rather. So it's limiting. I just don't take a ton of stock in it. Like, good things can happen. You can get meaningful takeaways, and it's the same deal with Costa Rica. No European-based players can play. So I don't know. It's just a January camp. Like, it is what it is. It's fine, but I'm not going to live or die based on this result.
You really missed your chance to take a shot at Gyasi Zardes there. I just want you to know that.
I don't hate him.
I'm not. No, that's just. You could have just, if you wanted to be like the rest of the internet and just take a shot at Gyasi Zardes. We gave you the chance. I'm just saying.
It's the low hanging fruit. Again, like I was joking about before. It's all about expectations. What do you want from what are people realistically expecting? Like, I don't understand.
I think it's also a byproduct just of how shallow the talent pool is at that position too, which is kind of why you see Gyasi Zardes.
That's the thing that pisses me off so much is that when people, like, I've had this conversation with so many people where, like, you ask two questions and their argument unravels. Everybody that's crapping on Gyasi Zardes, tell me who you would play. Go ahead. Name, like, what do you want to do? Play Pulisic as a false nine? Like, or you really want Josh Sargent, who's not getting a ton of minutes in Germany, and he's not looking that great right now because he's still a kid. Like, go ahead. Who would you want to play?
Yeah, Jake. Who would you want to play, Jake? Huh, Jake?
I actually no. Okay, if this wasn't the January camp, I think that you can probably have more of those discussions of who would you rather play.
Yeah,
but it's January camp. You really can't have those discussions. I mean, look. It's some meaningless friendly. You're just more so looking to see what the kids do, I guess. I don't care if Gyasi Zardes is there. If this was a competitive match, if this was a World Cup qualifier, I'm like, we are starting Gyasi Zardes at striker. Like, we got some issues here. But then again, this kind of goes back to the Michael Bradley versus Will Trapp argument. Who the hell are you going to play? I mean, they're going to bang the same drum that I mean, like, I don't know. It is what it is. I mean, look. Maybe if Josie Altidore's healthy, that's the guy you lean on, and that's fine. But we've said this multiple times. Armand has echoed this multiple times in the show in the past. This team has a lot of problems up top if Josh Sargent doesn't pan out.
Yeah, I saw a tweet. I don't know who. It might have been Soccer Hooligans. Question: what was the biggest hole? And I think overwhelmingly people chose the strikers. Where the goal is going to come from? That's the biggest hole.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Anyway, listeners. Let us know what you thought. Question of the day. Who are the best players? 10 best players in MLS. Maybe do it what Tom did. Just construct your best 11, not 10. Best 11. Make it a little more challenging for yourself. Or you could just be lazy like Jake and I and just say, here are the 10 best players. Who cares what position they play? Anyway, listeners, follow Jake at Jake Watroba. Give Tom a follow at Tom Bogert. He's got phenomenal content. He's well connected with the league. So he breaks some news here and there, and his work is fun to read. Follow myself at Steven Jodren, at the Uncle Sam Soccer Pod, at Uncle Sam Soccer Pod, at gmail.com. And listeners, next week is the Super Bowl. We're not going to do a show during the Super Bowl because that would be dumb. But we haven't decided if we're going to take it off or if we'll publish a podcast earlier in the day. So we haven't made up our minds. Anyway, if not, see you in 2 weeks or next week. Enjoy the Super Bowl.